The Historic Preservation Trust of Lancaster County recently discovered personal items owned by Thaddeus Stevens.
Fox 43's Tyler Hatfield is live in Lancaster to tell us more about some of these unique belongings and where they're going next. Good morning, Tyler.
Good morning, guys. This is really cool. Some of these items include a Bible, a law book, and one of Thaddeus Stevens' wallet. Now, all these items will be donated today to Lancaster History at the Thaddeus Stevens and Lydia Hamilton Center for History and Democracy. Now, if you don't know already, Thaddeus Stevens was a prominent statesman from Lancaster who was also a radical Republican and who championed African American rights before, during, and after the Civil War. And here to break down some of these items, I have James Doe. You're the executive vice president of the Lancaster,
the Historic Preservation Trust of Lancaster County.
It's a lot to say.
It's a big title. Yeah.
But let's talk about some of these items, but first, how did you rediscover these?
Well, we've been involved in a project to digitize our rather extensive collection of documents, and during that process, we rediscovered these objects that had been donated to us about 20 years ago.
And one of these objects, this is a Bible. Now, just kind of talk about, why this is important.
Well, this Bible is dated 1844 and signed by Thaddeus Stevens. This would have been just about the time he was moving to Lancaster from Gettysburg. Wow. So it's quite possible this was the first thing he purchased upon his arrival here in the city.
And I noticed it's kind of small. It's a pocket-sized Bible, so maybe
Yes.
Thaddeus Stevens could have carried this around with him.
He may well have. He was a great orator, and I can imagine him sitting over in the corner and looking for some biblical references to put into one of his speeches.
And next we have one of his law books. He was a lawyer in Gettysburg and in Lancaster first, so tell us a little bit about this.
Well, he had a rather extensive collection of law books. He was a practicing lawyer as well as a congressman, and upon his death in 1868, the collection got dispersed at auction. So there are volumes spread out all around the county and the nation, really. There were many fans of Thaddeus Stevens that wanted a piece of his estate, so purchased the book. We've been doing our best to help the Lancaster History to find some of these objects so that they can recollect his collection and put it on display at the new museum. So we're delighted that we have this. It was one of many books dating from the 1860s.
Wow, and finally we have a wallet. Now this is a very personal item for Thaddeus Stevens.
Yes, this is something he probably would have carried every day, probably later in his life. There would have been money in there and probably some other important papers that he would have been carrying with him.
There's no money in it right now.
No, unfortunately, I suppose, we didn't get a cash donation.
It's okay.
The objects are priceless.
Well, we know he did Apple Pay for most of his life, I think.
That's
so he didn't really carry much cash around. But if you want more information about some of these items, that donation will be held today at 9 o'clock. But you can head to our website at fox43.com. For now, live in Lancaster, I'm Tyler Hatfield, Fox 43 News.